A civilized country depends on how children are raised. And the way for children to be properly raised is in a stable family with one mother and one father.
So there's the practical side of it. Obviously, it's an immoral.
You can think of it this way. There's a certain trade-off between what anthropologists call mating effort and child-rearing effort. And under the system of hypergamy, or what you find among the lower primates, is that an enormous effort goes into mating and not so much effort goes into actually raising the children. The great discovery of monogamy made by human beings is that by getting everybody married at an early age and getting as many people married as possible through the system of monogamy, you give people more time to devote to raising their children. So the purpose of monogamy is not to make it hard for men to find sex. It's quite the opposite. It's to make it easy. It's to make mate seeking relatively easy in order to leave people time for the more serious business of raising their children and transmitting a culture.
So you're saying it's a bad deal for the men, so a lot of the men choose to stay single, but what ends up happening to the men when they get older under the system?
Well, it's actually easier for men when they get older, I think, than women. You see, in early adulthood, the women have it all over the men. Women have control the supply of sex. Men are the ones who want it. So the power is very much on the side of the women. Over time, that changes. Men's earning power increases as they get older. They may actually be much more attractive as mates at the age of 40 than they are at 20, while women, of course, entirely lose their sexual attractiveness during the same period. So what you get is a funny kind of, I call it the revenge of the nerds. The women essentially waste their power. They use it to mate with alpha males who don't need to marry them, and they despise all the men who would be willing to marry them. But then, in the end, over time, they're the ones who lose out. The men become often very affluent. If you don't have to support a wife and children, you can save a lot of money. You can do quite well for yourself. And in the long run, I think men don't need marriage as much as women do. But it's something that only appears with time. And that's why you get these shrewish women in their 30s who hate all men. They can't figure out why they can't get a man to commit. Well, it's because they made improper use of the power which nature gave them in the early part of their life.
So they kind of screwed up. But I guess the sexual power they had when they were young it's kind of overwhelming that they couldn't think rationally. But I guess a lot of the men sort of have kind of schadenfreude once they see what happens. Exactly.
Yes. I'm told that there's a certain class of successful men who find themselves being pestered by aggressive dating services. See, these women who pass up their chance to find a husband when they're young, they'll end up plowing thousands of dollars into these matrimonial services that claim they're going to find husbands for them. And wealthy and successful men will have their phones ringing off the hook with these dating agencies trying to fix them up with these stupid women who didn't get married when they had a chance to and are now angry and bitter.
And TV gives kind of like on Sex and the City, the main character, she actually gets married to a successful businessman at age 40.
Yes, yeah. You can't believe in television. There's a whole class of movies like this that show women behaving in the way their hormones drive them to behave, very stupidly. And since it's a movie, since it's a work of fiction, they end up living happily ever after.
And you brought this up about societies that are polygamous, like Africa and the Islamic countries, and how those are very kind of barbaric societies.
Yes, certainly, yes. Monogamy is as important as the wheel and fire in establishing our civilization. When monogamy goes, Western civilization goes.
And I think that's also, it's one of the main reasons our society is collapsing. I do think when you talk about the social conservatives, you're right about that. It's an older generation. Maybe the younger generation of conservatives will see the light on this. They probably will.
Yeah, perhaps.
Will at some point.
Younger men just know more about raw female sexuality because they've actually experienced it. They've grown up with women who are not raised to become wives and mothers. I'm intrigued by the generation gap in the response to my own work. A lot of older men don't like it, and they call me a misogynist, and they just, I think a lot of them find it hard to believe that things could be as bad as I describe them. Young men come up to me and say, thank you for explaining what I've seen with my eyes for my whole life, but I never had an explanation for before. They've seen the data, and they're ready for my explanation of what's happening. So, yes, I think the whole idea of conserving monogamy really is irrelevant now. Essentially, it has been destroyed, and we have to reestablish it from the beginning, almost. And for that, I do believe my work will be more valuable than that of the conservatives who write about how sexual liberation allows men to prey upon innocent women. These people do not know what's going on.
Social conservatives do is Bill Bennett was a good example, telling the young men to man up.
Oh yes. It's not going to work until. It's something that it's easy to say because men are expected to be stoical and are expected to put up with a lot of hard work, a lot of pain and disappointment, but everyone has his limit. And if you read a book like Steve Baskerville's Taken into Custody, you'll see that men are being asked to accept things that are really unacceptable, and that over the long run you're not going to be able to get men to live with anymore. I think there is going to be a counter-revolution. It's gathering right now, and I hope that my own works are a part of it.
Yeah, your article, this essay alone, I think has had a huge influence on a lot of people, including myself.
By the way, now that I'm finished working on this book with Walter Kistler, I do hope to start a book on the subject of the sexual revolution and feminism.
Well, you absolutely have to, because no one's really written a book on the subject that really covers these issues. You definitely have to. But we're out of time, so I'd like to thank you for being on.
All right, I enjoyed it.
That's all we have for tonight, so take care, and we'll be back with you next time.